Then we're going to sell it. We're going to
well,
sell it.
Okay. Well, thank you everyone for joining. If you don't mind, maybe turn your cameras on so Gene, our guest, can see your smiling faces and stuff like that. So we try and get guest speakers as often as we can. And our guest speaker today is coming to you from Columbus, Georgia, which is in Western Georgia. It's kind of close, I think, to Auburn, right?
Yeah, it's right on the state line, and Auburn University and Auburn, Alabama is in our DMA.
Okay. So this is Gene Kirkconnell, and he is the news director for WRBL, which is the CBS affiliate. And just the reason why Gene is with us is one of my former students, Amanda, who's wave Amanda, she's with us there, asked me if I could be a reference for her, and she was applying for a job at Gene's station as an MMJ. And of course I said yes, because I love Amanda. And Gene called me, and Gene and I talked for a while, and I really liked his demeanor, and we got to talking. And then Gene also mentioned along the time of his conversation that he does speak to other universities. And I asked him if he wanted to be a guest speaker in our class. You know, he's a news director, and obviously you guys are getting ready to graduate. And he said yes right away. Then, as you know, he did a PowerPoint, which he recorded, and I think a lecture for Auburn. And I looked at it, and I got to say that as someone who in the past has taught resume writing and interviewing and everything, not only did I not disagree with one single thing that he said in there, but there was some stuff in there that really provided some extra insight into it. So I really liked it, and obviously it's posted on our course website, which I kind of tried to get you guys to watch and stuff like that. But so without any further ado, I'm going to introduce you to Gene. And Gene, maybe just kind of talk about your background a little bit and stuff like that. And then and Gene is a 2-hour class, and not that you need to be here for 2 hours, but guys, if you have any questions, maybe just kind of think of them. And at the end, you know, you can go ahead and ask him, you know, some stuff going on.
Yeah, I appreciate that, Jay. Thank you so much. And I'm committed to being with you guys for the full length of your class if I can. The only caveat I would let you know, someone's going to knock on my door here if need be, but the Secretary of State of Georgia 90 minutes ago was down to 47,000 votes in terms of what might happen in calling the state. So if something happens there, I might need to step away for 10 minutes and blitz to the control room and get a breaking news. Just make sure that they're all set and ready to go, but I just need to make sure we're ready to fire if that drop of that domino has an effect on, of course, what we're all looking for in terms of the results for the presidential race. And you may or may not be aware, but there's 2 Senate seats up for grabs in Georgia right now. And in effect, the control of the Senate is now residing with the outcome of those votes in Georgia. It looks like both of those races are going to go to a runoff. One is we're pretty sure is in a runoff, but the second one, which was supposed to be a GOP walkaway, is now neck and neck. Probably at times it's been under 1,000 votes. So it's crazy here in Georgia last week. So exciting stuff, big times in history, and Georgia happens to be right in the center of the storm for it. So that's the only caveat, and I won't leave you hanging. I'll just go away and take care of business and then come back as soon as I can. Yeah, my name is Gene Kirkconnell. I've been in some form of news or content creation my entire professional career. I have done everything in terms of the types of media, from working in newspapers to working in radio to working in the wire services to working in television and also working in new media, digital media. So I've done all of that in terms of being a content creator and a leader in those various content and station and or organizational operations. And it started honestly, Amanda knows this question because I asked her this question, and I ask all applicants this question, you know, what's your origin story? You know, we're all familiar. Spider-Man got bit by a radioactive spider and turned into Spider-Man. So what's your origin story? So I would submit probably my origin story started I have been and continue to be an avid reader and love reading and consuming fiction and nonfiction and love understanding how someone makes a story just sing, whether it's fiction or nonfiction or journalism. And so as a youngster, I mean, very little, I was already into reading, and I got a job as a paper boy. And these were in the days when people actually got, you know, the newspaper actually printed on paper, and a paper boy would throw it off into your front yard. You'd pick it up and read the news. So I was folding my papers and putting them in the basket of my bike, and I would read the newspaper. And I started to notice that there were certain stories that I really enjoyed reading. And so then I looked at it and I realized there's a byline here, and I recognized a trend of certain stories would pop up, and I would remember the byline. So I said, okay, there are certain people that are doing, in my opinion, you know, an 8-9-year-old's opinion as a paper boy, a better job of writing stories that I enjoy. So I started to pay attention to the bylines. And then I was also, with my parents, they would watch the newscasts on television at night. And so I lived in New Orleans at the time. I used to watch WWL, the CBS affiliate in New Orleans, and long time, just blowtorch news leader in town there. And I would notice that I would read a story in the paper, and then I would watch the news that night, and it would be the same story, but I realized, oh, they tell it in a different way. They don't have to describe everything in words because they can just show the pictures. And that's when the epiphany went off in my head, and I realized, okay, there's a bunch of people out there, and they actually go to work every day and get paid to tell stories. That's what I want to do. So, you know, I then just, you know, probably the next thing I did was I got a cassette recorder, you know, a cassette tape recorder. This is before MP3s and iTunes, guys. And I used this cassette recorder to record play-by-play announcing for the flag football games in the street of my friends as 9 and 10 and 11-year-olds in front of my house. So that was my first announcing gig. And then fast forward to high school, I moved from New Orleans to Alabama, and my high school in Alabama did not have a high school newspaper. So I started a high school newspaper at my high school, and the local newspaper in town saw it and asked questions about what was going on. And they hired myself and another student to freelance for the local weekly paper to write articles about our high school and different little assignments that were, you know, easier to do, and mostly about high schoolers. And I wrote some articles about scouting because I was in scouting. So I got my first break professionally in newspapers that way. And then my junior year of high school, it was about a week after my voice changed from sounding like this to sound like what you hear right now. So I went to the little radio station up the road and to record a speech. I was competing in the Voice of Democracy speech contest. And I remember the title of the speech everybody had to do was "What America Means to Me." So I had my little speech, and we went to the radio station to record it on, then again, talk about dating myself with formats, reel-to-reel tape. So they could send it off to the national people in Washington, D.C. to be judged for national competition. So there was a big long line of kids in the other room. I could see through the glass, and I had the microphone in front of me and my speech here that I was reading, and everybody was going in one at a time recording their speeches. And so I was near the end, and I went into the booth and I was recording my speech. And as I finished my speech, I saw a lady walk into the room and tap my teacher on the shoulder and start talking to my teacher, and they were pointing at me. And I thought, oh, did I do something wrong? What's going on here? And then my teacher shook his head yes, and you know, his eyes kind of went wide, and the lady walked back around and opened the door to the audio booth and said, "Mr. Stewart would like to talk to you." And I was like, "Well, who's Mr. Stewart?" And she said, "Well, he owns the radio station." I was like, "Oh, okay, great." So I picked up my papers and waved to my teacher and classmates, and the next person came in to record the speech. And I walked down the hallway and into Mr. Stewart's office, and he was there. He had a speaker on his desk with a little dial on it. He could click Studio A, Studio B, you know, control, and I could hear the next student speaking on the box. And I realized, oh, he was just listening to me from the audio booth. And so he was a, you know, classic Alabama broadcaster, had been owning this little radio station for years, past president of the Alabama Broadcasters Association, and a very generous, just wonderful man, and changed my life. I mean, he, you know, he said, is this something you might be interested in? And I said, well, yes, sir. And I told him about starting a newspaper and writing the articles. And I, was thinking about journalism as a career. And I said, why? Do you guys do internships here? And he said, no, but we have a job. And that Saturday I was in there training, and the next weekend I was on the air, and I did that all through high school. And so Mr. Stewart told me my senior year, he said, all right, son, go find your replacement. I'm not going to let you leave till you find your replacement. He had a big booming, stentorial voice. And so I went to a couple of local high schools and recruited a bunch of people to come audition, and basically picked somebody from my high school to replace me, trained them, and then went off to school. And then that same guy, John Lindell was his name, he picked his replacement, and then that replacement picked his replacement. So Mr. Stewart got 4 employees out of me. So then all during school, obviously, like you guys, taking courses, trying to learn how to write for various platforms and formats, and the internet really wasn't around back then, but writing print copy, AP style, writing broadcast scripts, and then always hustling, looking for a gig. I met somebody at a party somewhere, and he had a bunch of photog gear on him, and he was taking pictures. And I was like, what are you doing? He goes, well, I'm taking these pictures for the society page in the local newspaper. And it was a Mardi Gras ball. And I was like, well, you need anybody? He goes, yeah, we're looking for people now. We can't cover all the Mardi Gras balls. And I said, I got a camera. And next, probably 2 days later, I got a big old bag of film. They gave me a bag of film and gave me an assignment sheet. And I went to a bunch of Mardi Gras balls in New Orleans and snapped all these people in their costumes and their big gowns, and took the roll of film in, got it developed. And one of my pictures the next 2 days later was in the Times-Picayune, so, and then they syndicated these photos all over the country and the world. People, maybe the New York Times, I never got anything in the Times or in a big paper, but Mardi Gras time, all these news agencies all over the world would want to show a picture of, like, well, this is what's happening in New Orleans at Mardi Gras. So did that, worked at other radio stations, interned at TV stations, did freelancing, worked pulling cable for football games, in college stadiums and pro stadiums, at the Superdome in New Orleans. So just anytime I could just say yes to something, to try to learn something new or get a credit or understand what that part of the business was about, I kept doing that. And I don't mean to ramble, but to give you the picture, then I get to I'm out of school. I'm in my first full-time job as a newspaper reporter and photographer. And I'm on the weekends, I'm a videographer and an editor at the TV station down the road. So I'm working all the time. Plus I'm working as a lifeguard, and after hours on the weekend, I'm DJing in a club. So I never slept back in those days, and y'all probably do that now too. And so I get to a fork in the road where I say, okay, I've got enough experience where I can make a play for a bigger TV station or a bigger newspaper. So I applied to a bunch of newspapers and a bunch of TV stations, and got 2 offers the same week, one at a bigger newspaper and one at a bigger TV station. And then my boss at the TV station in Pensacola, Florida, WEAR in Pensacola, stopped me in the hallway and said, I hear you're applying. Wait, we're starting a morning show. Do you want to be the producer for that morning show? The TV station didn't have any morning news at the time. And I said, yeah. So I turned down both of the other offers, stayed at that station and produced for a couple of years, and then began working my way up in the business. Producer, executive producer, news director, general manager, consultant, some corporate stuff and things like that. And so now my son is a graduate of Auburn University, which is in this DMA. My daughter is now at Auburn University. So one of the reasons I'm in particular at the Columbus TV station is I've been proximate to my son during his college years. I'm now proximate to my daughter during her college years. So it's really cool to be able to zip over there, or for her to zip over here, and us spend time together. And of course, before COVID, go to the football games and tailgate with them and stuff like that. So that's some of the fun stuff. And so that's where I've been, how I got into the biz, and why I'm here today. And really why I do now what I do now is for 2 reasons. By virtue of just being around a while and getting enough reps in, I know how to make the stuff. I can create content. I'm pretty good at it. I consider myself a good writer, and have had some affirmation of that through getting hired and through, getting some awards and stuff like that. And then I also like to coach the stuff. So in a market like ours, where we are able to hire people in their second job or their first job right out of school, I get the opportunity to work with the young people like you guys and find tremendous satisfaction in helping to decode and demystify some of that stuff, and then just provide a framework in structure in our newsroom and the certain kind of goals and values where, you know, you don't have to arrive to the party completely and perfectly formed, you know. So you walk into a newsroom here, and certainly it applies to a bunch of other newsrooms in the country. You don't have to be already an awesome expert at what you do. You have to have some basics in play. You have to have a certain set of confidence and drive. You have to be humble in terms of being willing to reflect and be self-aware, and then honestly assess, okay, well, I'm good at this stuff. I need to work at this stuff, and then be able to take coaching and then implement and grow. And so that's one of the things we really value here at our station is, you know, the growth line shouldn't be like this. The growth line ought to be like this. And you go vertical. After you get a critical mass here, boom. And then it's iterate, feedback, iterate over and over again. And we've had good success, people leaving here and this market going to Charlotte, Atlanta, New York, Columbus, Ohio, I'm trying to think who, Oklahoma City, Winston-Salem, North Carolina. So some solid, you know, substantial jumps folks are making out of this TV station and out of this market. And it's fun and it's a good place. It's a good town to live in. If you don't know much about Columbus, it's pretty cool. And there's a lot of cool stuff here. So that's the backstory. Any questions so far about what I've covered or me, or, you know, speak up, challenge me, tell me I don't know what the heck I'm talking about.
Mr. McConnell, do you have perchance any Irish ancestry?
My last name Kirkconnell is Scottish, and the storyline there is my great grandfather was in the Royal Navy, and he toured the Central America on a Navy vessel for the British Navy, and saw the Bay Islands of Honduras, Islas de la Bahia, and went back to Scotland and grabbed his family and moved to the Bay Islands, Roatan, Guanaja, and down in Honduras, off the coast of Honduras. So that's where my father is from, is Honduras. My mother's from Germany. That's why I got the blonde hair and the blue eyes. But my father's from Honduras by way of Scottish ancestry.
Oh, what a story.
Yeah.
Another question.
Yeah.
So Auburn has a pretty mean baseball team. Do you play any baseball?
I don't play baseball. I played football briefly as a youngster, and right now mostly I just play my iPhone and listen to music. So I'm not an athlete. And I've played golf previously to an embarrassing level.
So you're a disc jockey is what you are.
Yeah. I'm not a jock, I'm a disc jockey.
Mm-hmm.
Andy, thanks for the questions, man. So
I have a question for
yeah,
you.
Sabrina, go ahead.
I was just like looking on your website, and I saw that you had interviewed 3 presidents. I'm just curious which presidents those were, and how did you get that gig?
Yeah, I interviewed Clinton twice. I interviewed Carter twice.
My favorite.
And I interviewed George Sr. Once, but was in proximity to him another time. So during the course of those presidencies, well, actually for Carter, it was more, it was post-presidency, after he was already finished with the presidency and was like on book tours or Habitat for Humanity events. That was the context of my being able to meet him. And so, you know, I would say Bush Sr., very much a pool camera situation, far away, didn't really get up super close until he came to the mic, and I got to shout out one question at one time. Clinton, 2 really formal interviews, and one of them like right there with him, you know, and one-on-one kind of thing. It was more of a gaggle of Birmingham TV stations. We all flew to St. Louis, got set up in the venue there, and then Clinton made the rounds of the various markets during the campaigning for re-election. And so Birmingham was one of the markets that flew into St. Louis and did this kind of group interview for the market with him. And I'd say the thing about Clinton that I recognized on both occasions. Well, I saw him 3 times and interviewed him twice. And all 3 times when Clinton walked into the room, I mean, it's like nothing I've ever seen before. And I know there are other people that have that kind of a magnetism, but there was a certain level of buzz and chatter in the room. And this was a huge room. It was the railroad Union Station in St. Louis, which is a huge former railroad station and a big facility. There were hundreds of people in the room, and there was a level of chatter and chat in the room. And then a door opened, and the Secret Service walked in, and Clinton walked into the room, and it was palpable. The electricity in the room went through the roof, and all 3 times when I've been in a room when Clinton walked in, it happened. And he was amazing in terms of remembering names.
Wow.
One of my news director in Birmingham at the time was used to working in Arkansas and knew Clinton. And so we said to the president, we said, oh, our news director wanted us to say hello to you. And he says, who's that? And we said, Perry Fox. He goes, oh, Perry. He said, and he started rattling off Perry's wife's name and Perry's kids' names and asking us how they were doing. And these kids were like this tall. So how Clinton remembered 2 little toddlers from Arkansas, I couldn't figure it out, but his mind was like a steel trap when it came to knowing people and connecting with people. And then President Carter, he's amazing. He's just such a good human being.
My favorite president we've ever had, personally.
He would walk into a room, and it was less about interviewing a rock star or interviewing or meeting some sort of star, and it was more like, honestly, I mean, this is probably a poor metaphor, but it was kind of like meeting the Dalai Lama, just a kind person that just emanated this warmth and welcomeness. And you could tell when you were talking to him, he was totally locked into you and looking you right in the eye, and he's holding my hand and listening to me and just a warm being, just a great human being. So that's the background on that.
So I can attest to that. I was on an airplane, and he was on the airplane, and he like literally got up from first class and just said hi to everybody. Like he went to every single person on the airplane and shook their hand.
I'll be darned. What a great experience. Yeah. So that I've been blessed in being able to do some cool things and some scary things and of my own goofiness. I went to El Salvador to do a story one time, and all of the media people were in a helicopter with no doors on it. And so you had the web harnesses locking you into the helicopter, and I had a big camera, beta cam, and the center, the locking mechanism for the seat belt was a metal disc in the center of my chest. So the strap here, strap there and there. And so because all of the media people were like this, I had to hold the camera weird and shoot out the window. And then I had to turn it off and lean back so the guy with the camera next to me could lean out and shoot too. And so I was first because I was sitting right by the window, and I'm holding the camera like this and shooting out the window. And then when I turned the camera off and took it away from my chest, the metal medallion holding the seatbelt together fell off my chest and clinked on the floor and fell out of the window of the helicopter. And so I just wrapped my hand in the webbing behind me and leaned back and realized I was that close to falling out of a helicopter. So my own fault, my own dumb fault. So I've been blessed and saved from my own stupidity a number of times. So there's some fun stuff, but there's some goofy stuff too.
Gene, I have a question for you.
Yes, sir.
We all enjoy interviewing famous people, but sometimes when you get that famous person, the interview doesn't live up to expectations. I can tell you personally, I had an opportunity to interview Geraldo Rivera, and it just wasn't a particularly good interview. Can you think of an interview that you did with someone that you were really maybe looking forward to? You did a lot of preparation and everything, but then when it came time to do the interview, you walked away and go, yeah, not kind of what I had hoped for?
Let me think. Wow. Probably in recent history, and I like the guy, but he just doesn't have a lot of time for anything except his core duties. I interviewed him briefly at a Boy Scout event. I was co-chairing an event to raise money for the Boy Scouts, in Birmingham, and I told the camera guy to come down, and I was going to grab the sound real quick. And it was Nick Saban. You know, I mean, he knows his stuff, and he's great at football. But from the minute the clock started ticking on the interview, and he was gracious. I mean, he was the keynote speaker at this event and helped us raise a couple $1 million. So we certainly appreciated that. But it was less disappointment. It was more, that guy's laser focused. He doesn't really have a lot of time for me and what I'm asking here. He's going to leave here and go right back to the field house in Tuscaloosa and get back to work. I mean, he was like, tick-tock, let's get rolling. Boom, boom, boom. See ya, out the door. So not so much disappointment, but I'm trying to think if I tend to be an optimistic person. And so I'm trying to think if nobody's ever really been super mean to me. Oh man, I wish I could recall something that would kind of fit that category. And I'm sure, let me think about it a while, and maybe I can pick something up. But
well, it's not necessarily someone that's been mean to you, or you just just the interview just didn't really go the way you hoped it would go, and going in, maybe you were just very excited about doing the particular interview.
Yeah, probably one of those early Bush interviews might qualify, because I think originally thought when we were on the front end of it, we were thinking it was going to be more of a local TV thing where we were going to be right there close to the president, and that would have been, and probably why it was maybe not as fulfilling an experience, because it was one of the first ones. So I didn't know really what I was doing, and I didn't know what to expect. And I had these big ideas in my mind, like, wow, I'm going to get to meet the president and interview the president. And then when I got there, it was like me and 500 other people, yelling across a blacktop parking lot so that Bush could hear the questions and answer the questions. So that might have been a sense of disappointment, where I went in with one expectation and came out with something less. But I hate to, I mean, there have been, like, obviously when you're doing, quote, regular stories, unless a celebrity, you talk to somebody on the phone and then you go to the location, and on the phone, they were just amazing and electric. And this is going to be an awesome story, and they can talk your ear off, and you get there and you turn the camera on and they see that lens, and man, they just clam up and shut down and, get all squeaky, and it's not as, they don't deliver on camera like they did on the phone or informally when the camera's not on. And really that's a function of, now here's this big old camera you're putting in somebody's face. And so you can understand why that might be intimidating. So again, that's about, my memory is stretched trying to think of another instance where, the interview failed to live up to expectations. But really in context, it's probably just, it's that normal everyday kind of thing would be the place where that's happened most often. So hope that answers the question. Okay.
Hi, Mr. Kirkconnell.
Hey, Melanie.
How are you?
Good. You okay?
Couple questions. Good. One is, it's very important for journalists to develop interviewing skills, and I think very essential, for one of the hardest ones. What would be one of your advices for students to develop those kind of skills?
I think that one of the most important things that you can remember is something that I notice coming into play, not only when people are conducting interviews, but I also notice it when people are simply talking to each other. And that is, sometimes people are not listening, they are waiting to speak. And there's a difference between listening and waiting to speak. If you are truly listening, then you ask your question and you fully focus on the person that's answering, because although you may have another question on your pad ready to go next, you shouldn't be thinking about what my next question is. You should really be listening to what that person is saying, and then in an organic way, as you become more experienced, your next question probably dovetails right out of something that person has just said. So it's more of a flow and less a question, answer, question answer sort of staccato thing. And again, some of that comes out of nervousness. You know, maybe you're interviewing this person, you want to make sure you get everything you need. You want to make sure you have all the facts and all the sound you need to tell your story. But just try to, as you do it more often and you become more familiar with the process and confident with your own ability to get what you need out of an interview, then I would say listen, because sometimes people will say something that will enable you to get something that you didn't expect out of the interview. I remember as a young newspaper reporter, a Navy fighter plane, a trainer, crashed in the area that we were responsible for covering. And the spokesperson for the Navy had a storyline, and they kept basically repeating the same 2 or 3 sentences over and over again about this incident. I knew from another source that there had been 2 planes involved in this incident, and one of them, they collided in midair. One of them crashed, and one of them made it back to Pensacola NAS. The spokesperson for the Navy would not confirm the involvement of a second trainer in the incident, and so I kept basically asking the same question over and over again. I would ask a question about the second aircraft and then let all the other 6 or 7 reporters ask their questions, and then I would ask my same question in a different way, you know. And so the spokesperson then kind of got worn down, I guess, and mentioned something about the second crew. She didn't identify or confirm the second aircraft, but she mentioned something about the second crew being checked out medically and being okay. And I don't even think she realized what she had done. And so luckily, my question was the next one up. And so I heard that, and I said, so just now you said the second crew got back to base and was checked out and is fine medically. Is that correct? And she said, yes. And I said, so that second crew was the second aircraft that was involved in this midair collision? And you saw her eyes go wide, but she was already halfway down the road and confirmed that. And I was able to confirm that there was a second aircraft involved in the collision, where that the one that unfortunately didn't make it back hit the and exploded, and the pilot and the trainer died. So that little window of the mention of something that I had been trying to get validated or on the record, opened the door for me, and I went right for it in the next question, and basically repeated her words back to her and said, so that confirms this, correct? And the only answer she could give was yes. So that would be an instance of listening very carefully and then following up. Does that answer your question? Yeah, okay, Melanie?
Yes, consistency and listening to the interviewing. The second question was, I saw your PowerPoint presentation with the students and your video that you had it on YouTube about applying to different jobs, 100 jobs, making your profiles, doing the research. Of course, I think pretty much every single student wants to first apply to the hometown market. And I've been doing a lot of research on my hometown market here in Miami. And a lot of the jobs require over 2 years of actual field experience. Although I've been doing reporting for South Florida Media Network. I don't know if you're familiar with that. It's an institution affiliated to FIU, but it's a little independent. I don't know if that qualifies enough to apply for a reporting or an MMJ job if they all say over 3 years of field experience in a station, in an actual station that could be I worked at Channel 7 or something like that, which I don't have at the moment.
Stephen could probably answer that question better than me, but I would imagine that if I would just compare Miami and its market size to any comparable size market, I would suspect it's difficult for somebody without the required several years of professional experience to break in a market of that size, because it's a super fast-paced market. You got to have your nuts and bolts together and down. And the other part of it is you got to be fast. I mean, Miami's a really interesting and unique market that requires a lot of speed because a lot of stuff happens all the time, and that lineup's always changing. I mean, you know, in a market like Columbus, we have some spot news and some crime, but not to the extent that a big market like Miami has when, you know, I don't know, Stephen, you may know, there could be 15 live trucks on the street at any given time, and, you know, a satellite truck and 2 helicopters in the air. And, you know, in essence, all those reporters are bidding for time in the newscast. And if you are third slot and then 3 or 4 other stories come in that are better than your story, suddenly you're not in the show anymore. You just got demoted and knocked out of the show. So by virtue of, you know, you got to have a bunch of reps to be able to identify a story, you know, gather the elements, turn that story fast. And then, you know, at SVN, what are they doing? Like 29 hours of news a day now. So they're usually saying, okay, I need you live at 4, I need you live at 4:30, 5, I want you at 4:45. And you're doing like 7 live shots in a row. And one, you know, that's all live VOSOTs, and they want a different SOT and a different VO for every shot to make it different and advance the story. So, you know, it takes reps to be able to perform at that level. Now, you know, I talked to a lady a couple of weeks ago who is not on the air and is not reporting at a Miami station, but she is behind the scenes, and she is probably 6 months out of school, and she's working in production at a Miami station, or well, no, I'm not sure what department it's in. She's editing video at a station in Miami, and she's she's only, you know, out of school 4 or 5 months. So getting a job at a TV station, and she had a really unique circumstance to be able to even know about that job and get that job, but she's not reporting on the air. And I don't know the history of the Miami market, but there aren't, I mean, I can't really name any recent instances where I know of people that I've either met on college campuses that went straight from a college campus to a large market like that. It's pretty hard to break in. And so, and I would say to you too, then, you know, many of us like the idea of landing that gig in our hometown, you know, TV station and being close to family and stuff like that. I would say to you though, that as you anticipate graduation and targeting positions, if you limit yourself to Miami and markets in Florida, then you're simply going to decrease the number of jobs for which you can contend. So before you, you know, what I usually say to a lot of students, I say, before you get a mate and kids and a mortgage, go have an adventure for 2 years and get some experience somewhere else, and then try to get back home again. If you're in a situation like you, where you live in a big city with, you know, a requirement of 2 or 3 years of experience at least before you could break in. Does that answer your question okay?
Yes, it did. So start with in an off-screen job or a smaller market, pretty much.
My recommendation.
So you get the solid.
Yeah, my recommendation
foundation.
is what you know, decide what you would like to do and what you would like to be, and today when we hang up, start doing it. You know, if you want to be a content creator, then start making stuff. You know,
Yes,
and
yes.
and even if you're not getting paid for it, do it for class. And if you don't have a course anymore, just make stuff and put it
Upload
on
it
your
on YouTube.
YouTube channel.
Mhm.
Because the more you do it, the better you get. You know,
Yeah,
this is,
consistency throughout social media. I got all the recommendations from your video. Thank you so much.
yeah. Just make a lot of stuff, because, you know, 10,000 hours makes a Hall of Fame, you know, baseball star or an awesome reporter or a, you know, an Olympic athlete. You got to get your 10,000 hours in,
Right. Thank
whether you're
you.
getting paid for it or not.
And you know what they say about how to get to Carnegie Hall, right?
Practice, practice, practice.
Mm-hmm.
Mr.
I have a
Corrado,
question.
Shane, I think Shane started first.
Yeah, so to kind of piggyback off what you were saying and what Melanie was saying about finding jobs within the particular field, for myself, for speaking for myself, I want to do more production. So, you know, I spend a lot of my time editing. I have like certifications in, you know, Premiere, After Effects. I'm teaching myself Advid, and basically all these different programs. So I want to know, what would you recommend would be the best way to start getting into production?
All those things you're doing are fantastic. And again, I would also tell you, make stuff. So also what I would encourage you to explore, are you aware of something called OBS?
Yes.
Okay. So do you know how to use it? If you don't, learn how to use it.
Yeah, I have a little bit of knowledge of that, and also Telecast. I've used a little bit of it.
Yeah. So any of those kind of browser-based switching programs, which are free. I mean, OBS is free, you know?
Yeah.
If you can get some experience doing that, and you could then maybe find some YouTubers that that have some YouTube shows that would like to be able to maybe concentrate on the gaming and have somebody else switch the show for their stream while they're doing the gaming, you could then assemble a reel of YouTube shows for which you were a director and technical director. So you could add to your resume reel by finding some alternative media stuff to switch and be a director on. So that would be one thing I would say to consider, because it's inexpensive to get into that game. OBS is free, and if you know anybody who's a YouTuber or producing that kind of stuff, look also. Sometimes your local governments have their own television equipment, and I know of several people who have worked for us here at WRBL have actually either interned or gotten part-time jobs at City Hall or the county government here, working with their video gear for like just switching city council meetings and county commission meetings. And there's
That's how I got my start. That's what I did. I did the city council with the blue box shoots.
There you go. Yeah, yeah. So that would be so learning all the software and hardware and getting your certifications is fantastic. I would also say just make stuff, and if it's in your case it shows, and it's YouTube shows, or it's a city council meeting or something that's not maybe a newscast or switching a football game or something like that, then and I'd look for crew opportunities on things like those small local production companies that do the streaming on Friday nights of high school football games. Okay. Check out some of those companies and see if you can get on operating camera, and then show them what you got. Hey, I know how to do graphics, guys. I know how to do audio. I can actually switch the show. Why don't you let me do hey, let me do the 5 minutes of the second quarter. See if they'll let you kind of sub in and show your stuff, and then you can get your name around and get more gigs like that. Does that make sense? And does that help you out at all?
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense. Yeah, thank you.
Yeah.
I have a question. So
yeah.
we've spoken a little bit about as far as growth and kind of being open to criticism. So I was wondering, what were some things that you would say you really stuck with throughout your career that made you as successful as you have been?
I can tell you I'll start with some of the mistakes I made. Your age, and in probably my early 3 to 5 years of my career, being somebody who is I probably have an engineer's mind and an artist's spirit, right? And the reason I say that is I love to write, and there are some elements of content creation and writing where there's no formula for it. It's like you read it or you see it and you go, that's the stuff, right? I've always tried to, for myself, figure the mechanisms out. I mentioned the byline and recognizing the connection between newspaper stories and TV stories, but understanding even at a young age, those are different formats. But what I've tried to do early in my career is apply sort of a methodology on how to create consistency in terms of quality. And that's because I wasn't good when I first started, right? So how do I get better stuff out more often? And so to create a template to go by as a starting point was something, right? My mind as an engineering mind tends to drift toward sometimes, and I fell prey to this early in my career, focusing on the minutia at the expense of the larger story to be told. So as someone maybe early on who was learning how to shoot video and become a better photojournalist, I was really focusing on shooting great nat sound and shooting sequences, which are all tools to tell a great story. But in my focus as a photojournalist on getting the sequences right, sometimes I would get into friction with a reporter I was working with because I was just dumb and I didn't realize it's like, yeah, that is a piece of beautiful video you just shot, but who the hell cares? The story is this. Just tell the story, And so what I would say is I wasted several years, instead of just calming the heck down and listening more to collaborators, I wasted some time trying to prove this is awesome video. We need to use this video. So I would say it's a little different now because most of us are one-man bands, but realize that what we do is a team sport. You hold one second. Come in.
Question about Liz's package when you get a second. I know you were in the middle of saying something.
Yeah, go ahead.
Uh,
Excuse me, guys. Go ahead.
Her package is 2 minutes,
Uh-huh.
which is pretty long, especially with everything else we have going on.
Right.
So Tynes and I cut it down to 1:30 and some change.
Okay.
She's uncomfortable with that.
Okay. Do you want to email me the cut down script?
Sure.
Or is it in the 6?
It's in the 6.
Can you guys give me just 3 minutes? I need to check a script real quick. So hang with me and be patient, and it's in the package of the script.
Yes.
Okay.
You're on the clock.
Yeah.
3 minutes.
Okay. I got a package that aired at 5, and now we need to cut it down for 6, and I'm looking at.
There was a bunch of introductory material, and so I got right to Muskogee County.
She didn't use that help shine the light line, did she?
I
I think that is the 5 o'clock version of that.
Is there a different version for 6?
I rewrote the 5.
Oh, you rewrote
So
the 5.
was the 6 dragged over into the 5?
The 5?
The original package script?
Yes, I wasn't aware that there was a different version.
I rewrote the 5.
Okay.
And so what this, I believe, is the source script, maybe for the 5, for the original 5.
Right.
So does this, guys, you know what? I just need to go watch this package real quick. It's a 2-minute package. I'll be back in 3 minutes. Bear with me. Thank you, guys. Appreciate your patience.
Dun, 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 dun,
This is
dun,
the
dun.
coolest thing ever. It's like real life.
No, he's very engaging. So, and you guys are asking really good questions. So that's good. Obviously, when you bring in people with experience, that certainly, helps out. One thing that I'll add to what he says as well is, and I've said this before, as best you can, if you can associate yourself with people you can learn from, it'll help you in your career. And I was really fortunate in my first job, that there was a guy working there that to this day is one of my best friends. I was the best man at his wedding. I introduced him to his wife. He shot probably about 80% of the videos I've ever done. And he was just so knowledgeable and so good that I was just fortunate enough that I got into good habits like immediately because of learning from him. And there were other people in the in the cable industry that I work with that were doing production, that if he weren't there, I just wouldn't have been able to pick up some of that skill set because they just didn't know. There's an expression, and you guys can steal it from me. You just have to give credit that I use. It's called STPT, which stands for slap that puppy together. And, you know, sadly, a lot of the folks I worked with, that was sort of like their mindset on how they did their work. But he's so meticulous. And, you know, now in a professional sense, we almost complete each other's sentences because we're just so, having worked together for like, you know, 35 years, you know, and stuff. And I think when you take a job, you know, obviously when it's new, you know, you're trying to learn from people, you know. I mean, Steve told me that in Channel 7, you know, like he works with a lot of the youngins that just come right out of there. So if you're someone in that situation, you're fortunate enough that like Steve is your boss, you know, boom, you're going to really learn and grow, but it doesn't always happen. And I think that's something that you sort of have to sense, you know, like, is your career moving forward, you know, and if it's not, you know, you may need to make the next move. And I might have told this story before, but, you know, I'm just killing time till Gene comes back. One of my former students in Miami-Dade got a job working for the city of Opelika, shooting those government meetings and stuff like that. And, you know, he only had an AA degree. And at the time, and this was probably in the probably early 2000s, like starting him out at like 40 grand. And back then it was like, dang, that's pretty good. And, but I told him, you're not going to be able to learn anything. You know, there's no one there for you to learn to. And you're going to be calling Van Voris and me all the time and asking us how to do this. And although the money is good, you know, within a certain amount of time, you're going to be stuck in a situation where when you want to move on, you're not going to have the skill set to be able to do that. And, you know, and he did take the advice and he didn't really stay there very long. So, you know, that's a big part of it. So obviously, you know, you don't always know when you're working if you're really learning, you know, the proper way to do it and whatever. But, you know, it's just the ability to learn and just be a sponge and really soak in knowledge and not think you know better than anyone else is a big key to doing this. And he's back.
Thanks, guys. Sorry about that.
No, I gammed on for a while.
Yeah, so we had a reporter that did a really good story, got a political expert to analyze a vote count in Muskogee County, Georgia, and then extend that analysis across the state of Georgia, because Georgia, basically the thesis of that package is Georgia's going purple. You know, it's no longer a lock for the GOP. In Muskogee County, this go round where we are sitting right now, had a big shift toward Biden, you know, and Biden topped the totals tallied by Clinton back in the last go round. And so there's a shift toward more Democratic voters coming out and exercising their vote in Muskogee County. So good analysis. And, you know, we're right in the middle of this count going on right now. So any kind of numbers thing you can do, and specific to this local county and how the counties around Atlanta are getting focused on by the networks, but this analysis focused on the counties here in around Columbus and Augusta and Savannah, the smaller cities in the state, and how without those cities, you wouldn't be seeing this kind of a fight going on in Georgia and a move upward for the Democrats in this election sequence. So, you know, in essence, that what just happened there is we had more time in the 5 o'clock. And so we gave the reporter a longer period of time to do that story. And then we move into the 6, and we don't have as much time in the 6 for her story. And so her and the producer are fighting over, you know, you just gave me $1.50 and now you're telling me I got to cut it down to $1.25, and I don't want to do that. And so I just waited in the middle of the fight. And honestly, didn't have to do anything because by the time the discussion was over, the reporter said, I don't want you to do it. I'm going to do it. I'm going to go cut it down. So she turned back around and went back to the edit bay so she could make a call about which soundbite or two to clip out and still keep it lucid. So it's a win. She decides her own destiny. We fit her story in. We get in 2 other stories in the 6 o'clock we needed to get in. So that's a healthy discussion, which we encourage. I just told another reporter in the room that probably 2 hours ago was talking to the exact same producer and said, and the producer said $1:20, which is 1:20. And then the reporter said, do you want it short or you want it right? And so they slugged it out for a little bit, and guess what? He brought it in at $1:25. So the producer gave a little bit. So thanks for your patience. Amanda, did I answer your question okay?
Yes, you did. Thank you.
Okay, great. Who was up next? I'm not sure if somebody else was popping in to ask a question on the.
I had a question.
Sure.
I just wanted to hear from you, from all of your experience that you've garnered throughout your career. What has been something, I guess, like a bump in the road that you've experienced that no amount of schooling could have prepped you for, or maybe your mentors back then, like they couldn't have taught you?
Come in. Sorry.
Trump in Atlanta at 6 o'clock with Collins, RNC head, and Vernon Jones. We don't know if it's going to be on time, but we might need to cut it to the 6 for it.
Yeah. Tell Tom to take it.
He's aware. He's working on the show, so I just thought I'd just let you know.
Ooh, we muted the microphone. Quick, who can read lips?
I can. Just kidding.
That's crazy that he just like agreed to do this during such a chaotic and pivotal moment for news.
Not to mention while his 5 o'clock show is on the air. It's
Right.
amazing.
Well, when we agreed to do this time, he had said to me anytime after Tuesday. I guess everybody thinking by this time everything would be wrapped up. So I did reach out to him again and say, okay, you sure you're okay with that?
Yeah, Trump's in Atlanta and about to go live here in a second with a couple of stations from, a couple of politicians from Georgia. So I'm just making sure that they got their protocol down about when to take it, what to show, and how to do it on all the platforms, TV, website, social media, and how to clear it for the other stations in Georgia. So,
Gene, I wanted to tell you though, before you answer Christina's question, Christina is Amanda's partner in crime here. When we were doing the interview, when you were talking to me about Amanda on the phone, and I said these 2 girls in the back of the room there, and I would stay till like 7, 8 o'clock at night and talk to them. Christina was the other one, but she's not graduating, I think, for another semester or maybe 2.
gotcha. Well, nice to connect those dots. And Christina, I apologize. Remind me of your question because I got totally sidetracked there trying to wrestle that up to the ground.
Okay. I actually like when you get sidetracked because we can really see you in your element. It's really cool for us. My question was, with all of the experience that you've had throughout your career, what has been one of those bump in the roads, or maybe something positive that you've experienced that no amount of schooling could have taught you? There was no amount of advice from a mentor that could have spoken to you about that.
I think that there probably is a big long list of stuff for early career that I could share with you guys, but I think the thing that for me is freshest in my mind came later in life after I was a newsroom leader. And what I would say to you is it applies to what you're going through now and what some of your considerations you're making about where do you want to go, who do you want to work with, what kind of work do you want to be doing. And so I think I'm by nature, and I said it earlier, a positive person, and I tend to give people a second and a third and a fourth chance, and I tend to take people at face value. I have had the occasion to work in a couple of organizations, and unfortunately, they just didn't want to win. That's just the reality of it. You know, their priorities were elsewhere, and I tend to be someone who's super focused on doing the best possible work I can do, and I'm competitive, and I always want to win, and I kept kind of making excuses for what was happening in that particular organization and why we weren't doing this and why we weren't doing that. And again, I'm not the smartest, guy in the room, but I'm true to who I am and what I want to achieve. And finally, I gave it my all, and it came to the realization is like, they don't care about it as much as I care about it. It's probably time for me to go work somewhere else. So, just ask people plain, simple, direct questions, especially where you are now. And as you're interviewing for jobs, remember, you're also interviewing them, right? And in the recent months, as I've been talking to candidates for positions at my TV station, I have to remind some people, it's time for you to ask questions now. And you're not here trying to, only prove to me how awesome you are. You should be vetting me. You should be calling BS on me if you don't hear something ring true. And I actually have said to people, I don't know if Amanda, I said this to you, probably not yet because we weren't there in the conversation yet, but, I actually tell people, call people in my newsroom. Just call here after hours when I'm not here, and they'll tell you what the real deal is. They'll say, oh yeah, well, Gene's pretty good at this, but man, let me tell you, when it comes to this, he can be a headache. And I'm okay with you knowing that, because that, if you're contemplating joining my team, it's better, warts and all what you're getting into. And if, there's something really good over here that I'm particularly good at or supportive of, then that might be attractive to you. But if I'm a train wreck when it comes to something over here, you just need to know that and decide, is that something I can manage? Can I manage up to him, and get what I need? And I don't have any problem in respect to that. So I would say be aware of what the values and the regular delivery of those values are in any organization or to which you're applying, because that will help you to decide whether or not it's a good fit. There is, many of you are sitting here thinking, can I prove to enough people I'm good enough to do the gig to get offers, right? And I would say to you, that's part of it, but really never forget, is it a good fit? I went to interview for my first news director job, okay? And I thought to myself, I'm sitting there and I spend the day at this place, and before the day is over, I realize I don't want to be here, right? And this is my first news director job interview anywhere ever, right? And I'm at dinner and I realize, oh my God, here comes a job offer, and I don't want to be there, right? Because I get offered the job, and so I just didn't beat around the bush. I said, I'm not your guy. I'm flattered. I appreciate it, but I spent the day with you. And I'm thinking to myself, I'm just trashing my career because this is the first news director interview I've been on, and I'm going to tell this person no, and they're going to trash me, and I'll never get another news director offer again in my life. I am about to torch my career. I was scared. I was terrified, but I said, I'm not your guy. I'm not a good match for what you need. And then I just took, 3 or 4 seconds to collect my thoughts. And I said, here's why. Here's what I see in your newsroom. Here's what you need. Bullet, bullet, bullet. I'm good at this, and I'm good at this, and I could probably on the job figure out this. But that's a big gap right now from what I see your newsroom needing. I don't have this stripe yet down to this last thing. So could I learn it on the job, and could I figure it out? I'm an able guy, I'm a smart guy, and I would work hard for you, and I could probably do an okay job. But you could turn this thing a lot quicker if you find somebody that number 3 thing that I don't really have yet and not yet versed at because I don't have enough reps. If you took that and you prioritize that as your first thing you want to check the box on for the news director you hire, I think you could turn this newsroom around a lot quicker. And I said, luckily I had some friends, and I said, and I know some people. I will recommend some people to you. And that general manager wound up hiring one of the people I recommended. So I basically talked him out of offering me the job and got somebody else hired And I thought, oh man, I was just depressed. I was depressed for 2 weeks. Like, I'm never going to get a news director job yet. Because he was aggravated, obviously. I was going there to lose the job. And, I mean, he'd already kind of vetted me and thought, this guy's pretty good. I think I want to hire him, but let me bring him in and kick the tires and make sure it's okay. And so I got to town and I realized during the process, no, this is not a good gig for me. I could probably figure my way through it, but it's not probably it wouldn't be and it wouldn't be the best thing for this TV station. So then I thought I'd trash my career. And 2 weeks later, another general manager called me and out of the blue for a job that was not posted and said, hey, I just talked to Jack, the guy that I turned down. And Jack said, if I didn't hire you for this news director gig, I was dumb. So that's the first news director job I took, was based on a recommendation from a guy that I thought I had burned and alienated. But because I was totally straight up with him and said, nah, I'm not your guy. I'm not a fit for what you need. But I gave him a solution, or I hope would be a solution, and it worked. Then he recommended me and I got hired for my first news director job. So to again, circle back and answer your question, just be true to who you are. Don't talk yourself into a bad situation if it's not a good fit. Is that fair? Is that answered okay?
Yes, thank you so much.
Absolutely, Christina. Nice meeting you too.
Nice to meet you.
So, Mr. McConnell.
Hey there, Andy.
Hey, so what I understood from what you said is that a lot of times you're gonna wanna know when to step away. Am I correct with my interpretation?
Yeah. And know when to say no. And you guys have a good, you got common sense. You're smart. You're sharp university students, and and try to get as much information as you can. Again, I'll take another example from a recent chat with a candidate, and this candidate is, go for it. This candidate tells me, I've been talking to a couple other stations, and so I'm not shy. I was like, who are you talking to? Which markets are you talking to? Tell me about them. Tell me about your experience. I'm trying to learn something too. Are they doing something cool in recruiting that I'm not doing that is connecting with candidates? And so she tells me about a TV station she interviewed with, and I say, oh, okay, I know the market, and I go, well, tell me about that experience. And then she proceeds to tell me about what she saw, what she heard, and what the people that worked there said. And then she said, I just didn't have a good feeling. I didn't think it was going to be good for me. So I kind of took myself out of the running. And so that's an okay thing. I mean, this is a person who's been trying for months to get a job on camera, and she was this close to getting a job on camera, but realized at the 11th hour there, that's probably not a good fit for me. I don't think I should go to that TV station. And that was the right call for her. So although, you're all contemplating landing the gig, and I would say you need to have balance. You can't afford to be this person that says right now, the only job I'm going to take is a sideline reporter job with ESPN. Well, get ready to say welcome to Walmart, because none of you guys is going to get a job straight out of school as a sideline reporter at ESPN. All right. I mean, chances, the statistics show that, right? Straight out of school. I'm not saying you'll never get there and achieve your dream. I'm saying statistically speaking, you're probably not going to get that sideline gig straight out of university. So you do have to have some common sense, and you're going to get to a point where hopefully after interviewing enough and applying enough, you're going to be, here's ESPN and here's Bismarck, North Dakota, and you've always lived in South Florida and you hate snow. Probably the happy medium is somewhere in here. These 6 or 7 markets where you're like, yeah, I'm ready for that. I can kill that job. These appear to be friendly people, and they're serious about their work. And so I'm narrowing my focus down in this last leg of my search and the interviews I'm doing, and I'm going to really seriously consider these markets and these opportunities. Does that answer your question okay, Andy? Great. Who's next?
I have another question.
Sure.
So I was thinking earlier, what difficulties do you think that journalists face now that they didn't face before? When, for example, when you started in the industry?
I would say the fortune that I had when I started in the industry, and I'm really dating myself when I say this, is journalists were looked up to a lot more. When I started in the industry, it was a big deal to be a journalist. It was a big deal to be a journalist on television or at a TV station or radio station or newspaper. And I think that the unending preaching about fake news and the media as demonizing the media has had its effect, and all the way down to a market our size. There are people that are, just regular Joe on the street that bring into a conversation with us local reporters. We're not Fox Network. We're not MSNBC. We don't have, we don't do talk. We don't do infotainment at our TV station. We report the news. We're not slanted. We're not going into it with a big agenda. But unfortunately, we get painted with the same brush that the national media, and to some extent, they deserve it. They deserve it. And so we unfortunately are the recipients of that. And so it's a little harder to get your gig done sometimes if you have somebody who, by virtue of putting us as a local news entity in the same box with national incendiary type infotainment broadcast, makes it sometimes harder on you guys now than it was when I first started coming up. I think that's probably one of the things that worries me the most about our industry, and honestly about the state of, honest democracy. I mean, I don't think there's an awareness and a value of what journalism does for our society and American society, and specifically in our democracy, because if you're getting all your news off of fake Facebook posts curated by China and Russia, and you're not paying attention to the good work being done by local and national journalists, then that skews the conversation and the willingness to accept certain kinds of information. That would be something that I would say to you in terms of what you guys are confronted with on the front end of your career, that I was not so much confronted with on the front end of my career. Is that a fair answer, Amanda?
Yes. I see what you're saying.
Yeah.
And everyone in your newsroom does speak very highly of you.
All right, those bonuses worked. Anybody else have a question?
I have I mean, it's kind of silly, but would you consider, because I've been working for a media company for the last couple years, and so this kind of relates back to, I think it was Melanie that asked earlier, I've run into the same issue as her, where I've been looking for jobs, but most of them have like a 2 or 3 year minimum requirement. I'm just wondering if the media company would count as experience. It's not a TV station, but it is media. It's a magazine. So
yeah, here's a lot. Like, thank you for asking that question, because there's a major point I try to make every time I speak to a class like this online and pre-COVID, when I go to campuses and speak. And I'm going to tell a story first, and then I'm going to answer your question. Okay. So I'm hitting the rewind button to about a year ago, and I have a person who comes from a respected college in this country that is known for its journalism. And I've met this person several times during campus visits. I've spoken with this person's professors, and they speak very highly of this person. I actually happen to know one of this person's friends that's in the industry, and they were just singing the praises of this person. And this person had a good grounding, had a pretty good solid reel for where they were in their development. And I thought, yeah, this person's a real deal. And so I said, well, look, you're close. You don't live that far away. Why don't you just, we've interviewed on the phone, just drive on down for the afternoon, and, take you about an hour and a half to get here. You spend the afternoon with us, observe the newscasts, meet some of the team. And so they came to town, and they were all gung-ho up till this moment, right? And they got to town, they observed the newscast, they met the team, and then I do usually end the visit with a one-on-one chat with a candidate. And it's like, well, you had this perception of what this might be like before you walked in the door, and now, your eyes have been open to a few things. What questions do you have for me? And I gave them the outline, and I told them we would be having this conversation. So they went into it shopping for the stuff, the epiphanies, right? And so they came into the meeting with me post visit, and they were more on fire than they were before they got to the TV station. And I'm like, okay, this is it. This is a real deal. And in my mind, I didn't tell them this yet because I had to talk to HR and get some nuts and bolts down. It's like 2 days from now, I'm going to offer this person a job, right? So we had great visit, killed it in every way. She was on fire and just loved it. And her friend told me the same thing. She just loved it, man. You guys were awesome. And I'm like, yeah, she seems like the real thing. She could be a good fit. She left our TV station and went back to campus, did her midterms. I send her an email and say, do you have a chance to talk? I didn't get an email back. I called her, I texted her, ghosted on me, totally ghosted on me. Like, wow, what happened? So I figured, okay, well, we just missed out. She got a job somewhere else and didn't follow up, and was like, well, okay, well, I missed out. I thought she was a good candidate. Somebody else probably saw that and hired her. And I come to find out a couple months later, she's at a smaller TV station, frankly, a TV station that's not as good as us, and not doing the kind of work she talked to us about doing. And I was confused. And so I called her professor. No, the next time I was on campus, I spoke to the professor who had recommended her. And I said, hey, what's the story with this person? Because here's what happened. And I told her that story. And the professor said, that does not sound like her at all. Let me call her. So the professor calls her. And so I come to find out after the fact, she absolutely loved us. She had already decided before she came here that if she got an offer from us, she was going to work here. She came to town, loved everybody she'd met, loved the newscast, and just thought, this is great. And went back to campus and started letting the little voice in her mind tell her some things. And she convinced herself she was not good enough to work at this TV station. So she talked herself out of a job. She didn't respond because she didn't want to tell me that she thought she wasn't good enough to work at our TV station. So I tell that story to you guys, and I tell it to a lot of college students and a lot of applicants now. And my bottom line is, do not tell yourself no. Make the hiring manager, make them tell you no. Keep after it. Keep pushing and pushing and pushing, and make them say, I admire your tenacity, but no, I'm not going to hire you. And then thank them for that clarity and move on to the next opportunity. But man, that just broke my heart when I heard that. It's like I had already decided to give her the job. She had already decided she wanted to work here. And then she listened to the voice in her head and said, I'm not good enough to work there, and went and got a lesser job at a lesser operation. And so that just broke my heart when I heard that. So to answer your question, the job posting says 2 to 3 years of experience, right? Now, if that's the job posting, put that in context. Is that the job posting for a Miami, or is that the job posting for a market which Jay and Stephen and Kate think you ought to be able to break into, right? Because I can tell you that's a job posting, theoretically, that could have been written for that job by somebody in HR 5 years ago, and the job posting has never been changed. And the news director may have never even looked at the job posting. They may have just called HR and said, post this job, and hung up and waited for the applications to roll in. I don't do that. I've rewritten every single job posting at our TV station that I hire for to make sure that all that archaic stuff that was listed in there 10 years ago is not in there anymore. And so, but I can tell you that's not what usually happens. And even if it is, right? Again, my ESPN scenario, right? Who knows? Maybe you're the first person to get hired right out of school at ESPN. I don't know what your reel looks like. I don't know how good you are, right? So there's probably ESPN or network, and then there's, you know, Miami and Atlanta, and then there's some other markets, and then there's a group of markets in here, and then there's me, right? Okay. And if you're good and you're coming out of school, you might be able to get a job here, right? But you should also be applying for these jobs up here that are possibly maybe this much out of your reach, because you just don't know.
Right. The worst they can do is no, right?
Yeah. And the bottom line is, even if you are not going to get that job in that slightly bigger market because you don't have the experience maybe that they are able to hire for, it's a practice interview. Just if you can get an interview, take the practice interview, pump them full of for all the information you can get, and then plant a seed when they say, Sabrina, thanks for applying. We've got somebody with a little more experience. Then you just look them in the eye over Zoom and you say, you know, whatever the news director's name is, Gladys, remember this moment, because in 2 years, I'm coming back at you and you're going to hire me. I'm going to make you eat your words. Have an awesome day. Plant that seed so they remember, in a fun way, but they'll remember you, and then you'll have an in, and they'll remember you when you are ready a couple of years down the road. So don't tell yourself no. Make somebody else tell you no. Is that a fair and complete answer?
Yes, it is. Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
Absolutely. I hear somebody's mic open. Anybody else have a question?
I also wanted to know, what does a typical day look like in your newsroom? Like, what have been some of the craziest days? I mean, except for the election, because I'm sure they qualify. But what does a typical day look like for you and for your reporters and everybody who works with you? Sure.
Let's get outside of election and big spot news, and let's look at just a normal cycle, right? So we have had a conversation the previous day about what we're going to be doing tomorrow and in the days ahead, and some of those stories are already locked in. Our newsroom works perhaps differently than some other newsrooms of our size. We are very enterprise driven, and our reporters, once they get up to speed, are responsible for working beats and filling their story pipeline full of ideas. So, you know, when a reporter starts here on day one, their pipeline's not full. So they get their beat assignments, they're taken around town and introduced to a bunch of people to help them get started. And then they start making beat calls and beat visits and regularly going back to the people that are on their beat to develop relationships. So those people will start to trust them, know them, and begin to feed them with leads and ideas. And so that takes 30 days or so to get primed and the pipeline to start getting filled. So we've got our list of stuff we know that's happening. You know, tomorrow the senator is going to be here campaigning. We know we got to be there. We've assigned a crew to that. We you know, this is happening. We want to live stream that for 2 hours on the website. We got a crew assigned to that. Sports needs help with the regional show that we do for the Southeastern Conference. So we're going to grab a couple of people and assign them to that from 2:45 to 3:20 to make sure that they can, you know, feed our other stations across the Southeast, you know, for reports about Georgia and Auburn. So there's some stuff that's on the calendar. We meet those obligations, and we work them around what the reporters then and MMJs and photogs and anchors are planning for possibly making the next day. So in an ideal world, all those journalists come into the meeting and their pipeline is full of ideas, and they've been working stories a little bit at a time. I got an interview here, I grabbed a little bit of video, I got the documents, and then they're fostering stories. And then in light of what's happening in the world, in the context of the kind of news that's going on, then they make a decision about, okay, I'm going to pitch these two stories that I've already done work on. It's not something I grabbed off the internet or social media this morning and I'm pitching an idea. They've already done some work on these stories, right? And they pitched the two ideas and we're like, Dan, those are awesome, you know? And okay, because this happened in Atlanta yesterday and we got that guy visiting Columbus today, story A is a really good angle and we can do a team report on that. Go after that one. Tomorrow, do the other one you just pitched. Make that story tomorrow. So we meet in the morning, 9:45, a Zoom meeting like this, and we pitch, everybody pitches, and we hash it out. We decide on stories, and everybody gets committed and knows what they're doing for the web and knows what they're doing for social and the various on their newscasts, and boom, they're usually the MMJs are calling from their phone and they're sitting in the parking lot of the story that they think we're going to give a green light to, and then they're going to call their source and say, yeah, come outside, let's do it. You know, they're already ahead of it and out there in the field. And so we got our calendar, we got our list for the day. We're out there, we're monitoring, obviously. We're getting updated information from our bureau reporter in Montgomery, Alabama, the state capital, and Atlanta state capital, our various other stations around the Alabama and Georgia that we cover. We share our list with them, they share the list with us, and we're like, oh, that's awesome. That dude that's speaking in Montgomery today is actually from Phoenix City, Alabama. So he's a local guy. Let's take Jerron's package and let's air that locally here today because there's a local connection there. We'll have him do something special in his tease that he does for our promos to highlight the local angle. So we're working all that. So people are out there doing their stuff, and then digital's, you know, somebody finishes their story at 10:15, they come back in, they write up a web article, put some photos on it, boom, they publish. We're digital first. So as soon as you can make the story online, you break it online. And then you finish editing your package, attach it, and then that package or a VOSOT of that story might then get allotted to one or more of the newscasts throughout the evening. 2:45 and so then we're also going through a cycle of newscasts. So 5 to 7 a.m. morning cut-ins, noon newscasts. So stuff changes mid-morning and focuses toward, all right, what do we got at noon? What's going on with the noon newscast? And then we get through the noon newscast. Then there's kind of a shift change. AM crews moving out, PM crews moving in, and we're starting to focus on the afternoon evening programs. 2:45 afternoon editorial meeting, 5 o'clock producer, 11 o'clock producer, 6 o'clock producer run their rundowns. Here's what I got. You know, I'm taking this story from Elizabeth at 5 o'clock. She's doing a live VOSOP from me. She's going to be on scene. She's got to cover this other story at 6:15. So she's doing a straight pack for 6. She's not going to be live. So we talk about the mechanics of the differentiating the newscast from each other. You know, the producers are brokering back and forth. Hey man, you got a pack yesterday. I want a pack today. You know, they're fighting for the good stuff, in a bargaining back and forth. And so then we get a lineup, and we'll probably make changes to that lineup. We always get, every editorial meeting, we get a weather briefing, you know, because weather's big. You got to be on top of weather. Right now, it's the same thing. It's awesome and beautiful. And next week sometime, we'll be worrying about that hurricane. That's what the weather briefing's been like for the last 3 days. But we always get a weather briefing just to keep it forefront in everybody's mind. And then from 3 o'clock on, you know, we're then breaking, then a lot of stories are maturing, and we're breaking them online, posting on social, and then pushing people, and promos are airing, and we're pushing people toward the 5 o'clock, and then pushing people toward the 6 o'clock. Post-show meeting after the 5. What went wrong? Was there a mic clip? Was there a battery that died? Did a live shot fail? Did a graphic get hung up? You know, just talking about the technical stuff, but also editorial. Let's make sure if there's a little tweak that's needed, if somebody left the A off the end of spelling for Georgia and we didn't catch it for some reason, correct that spelling before 6 o'clock, get that right for 6. And then we have a meeting after the 6 to do the same sort of QC quality control meeting. And then we forecast forward to 11 o'clock. We've already launched the 11 o'clock crew and they're already out there, you know, doing something for the 11 o'clock, but we just review, okay, yeah, in light of what's happened in the last 3-4 hours, is the 11 o'clock plan still reality, or do we need to change that and reroute any nightside crews to do something different? And then, you know, we've already had a conversation with the nightside crew and the earlier crews to do recuts of their packages and or stories with freshened writing and freshened stand-ups, so that we can either, if we want to air it as a package, we can air it at 11 o'clock, or it might air as a package in the freshened version in the next morning's broadcast. And the same forecast forward freshening happens for the 11 o'clock crew and gets turned around to the morning crew. So the morning producer gets in at, like, you know, 10:45, checks in with the 11 o'clock producer, goes to the booth, you know, with them, watches the show, is aware of any kind of technical issues that are going on, takes the handoff from 11 o'clock, gets a story list of what we prepared for them, and then the morning cycle is underway, and the overnight crew starts to filter in and then do the morning news, do the cut-ins, and then that starts all over again. So that's a typical kind of calendar, day part breakdown, editorial meeting kind of discussion, and there's a lot of Microsoft Teams communication going back and forth. There's a lot of emails going back and forth. There's some texts going back and forth, both from in our team, talking to the bureaus and the state capitals, talking to the other stations predominantly, or mostly in Georgia and Alabama, because that's where, you know, most of our you know, applicable content comes from, but then also to News Nation, our new primetime broadcast and set up in Chicago, that we communicate with, because then they're, you know, especially now, you know, every day they're like, hey, we need that from you guys. You know, we want that, make sure, so we have to make sure we have a generic out cue with the News Nation mic flag on it from our reporters, so we can feed that up and make sure they can put it on the national broadcast in prime time. And so that would be like a normal day. The other thing I would point you toward, that, you know, elections, obviously, we've been planning for elections for 6 months now. You know, we had a month's worth of rehearsals for election night. We reran wire tests for, you know, results to automatically load into every little graphic and ticker and website display, and, you know, ran them and reran them and reran them again, you know, just to double check. And then the other thing which I would bring to your attention is weather. You know, even on a day which is, quote, not normal, we are not blindsided. I mean, especially with weather, we are having conversations with our weather team, and they're like, next Wednesday, all heck could break loose. So we've already scheduled people, maybe 12 on, handoff, you know, 12 off, for in case a tornado hits. No one's surprised, you know. It's the production team's in place. We got field crews. We got in place what's called a picket fence. So if the storm is expected to come through, like here in our DMA, then we have people posted here and here and here. Because if the storm changes direction and goes in down here, you got a crew near where it might connect with something. So we, you know, for really severe weather, we got a picket fence out there with teams and live capability. And it's harder to do what I'm about to describe here in the Southeast and in many other places where you have hills and tree lines. But like when I was a news director in Kansas, if you are covering severe weather, tornadic weather, and you're standing somewhere in Kansas and you're looking toward the setting sun, you can see the edge of the earth curve away from you, because all there is between you and the setting sun is 1,000 miles of wheat fields, you know, going off. So strategically, for covering severe weather, then you have your picket fence out and you're standing there waiting, and you can see the storm coming from 200 miles away, you know, and then it gets to a certain point and the meteorologists are telling you, light it up. and you light up a live camera, and then your storm is silhouetted against the setting sun with no trees or hills in front of you. And when a funnel cloud drops out of the sky, you got it framed up live. You can just watch it walk across the horizon. So that applies in a similar manner, but it's more challenging to get those kind of dramatic live pictures in the Southeast or in other areas where the topography is different, but the same discipline and methodology exists. And I bring that in play because, you know, you see the interview on television and, you know, the person is standing outside, you know, of the town. It's like, we didn't know it was coming. This thing just came through like a freight train and tore everything up. You never know where a tornado is exactly going to hit, but meteorology is amazingly accurate, much more accurate nowadays than it used to be. And we are not surprised when major weather hits. We're sitting there on go, ready to light it up. And so it's just a matter of, okay, let's go live on the web. Okay, let's go live on Facebook. They're about, and my meteorologists are, I'm telling them, make the call about the severity of the weather before the National Weather Service does. We don't issue an official warning. Only the National Weather Service can issue that. But our meteorologists are scientists as well as presenters, and they will say, it's about to happen. I see this feature on the radar, let's go. We light it up, we break into programming on the air, and they're like, folks, I'm watching this, I'm tracking this. Any moment, I expect a warning to be issued for this weather feature here. If you're in the town of so-and-so, take cover immediately. And then usually what happens is National Weather Service issues a warning, tornado warning, boom, the map goes red, and we're tracking a tornado and we're moving crews toward that location to converge on that in a safe way, you know, behind the tail end of that twister. So that would be a non-normal day, but I just wanted to say the planning you heard for like a normal day is also in play for things like elections, which aren't normal, and stuff which you might consider random, a tornado, you know. Now, if something blows up or somebody shoots somebody, you don't really stick a crew in the field waiting for somebody to get shot, but we have a crew on standby that night, ready to roll if there's spot news. Does that answer the question okay?
Yes, and when there is breaking news that happened, even if it's like amidst the elections or anything else that's hectic, how do you as a news director keep your cool through all of that, since you have to kind of manage a whole bunch of other people who work with you and make sure everything goes smoothly? What are things kind of that you tell yourself so that you handle your stress, if you have any, as best as you can?
It's taken me a long time as a newsroom leader to create balance in my life and to realize that, guess what, you're not all that. You know, and so whereas maybe in my younger days when I was in newsrooms that were not as well resourced, I should say, and also I did not have the maturity and that I have now and try to maintain, I would think this whole thing's going to fall apart unless I do something. And so I had to, over the years, train myself to realize that really as a leader, what I ought to be doing is not stepping in with a cape on my back and a big S on my chest and saving the day. Instead, what I need to be doing is training all my people to be able to put on a cape and step in to save the day. So I invest a lot more time now in getting everybody else up to speed. And I just had a conversation with a producer today, and I looked him in the eye and I said, hey, you have the votes. Use the votes. In other words, you're the leader of that team. You don't need me to go in there and tell these people they ought to be doing this. You're the producer of that newscast. You have the votes. I believe in you. You're really good. Just use the votes and tell them what they need to do. You know, maybe they're a little nervous as a new producer to do that the first time or two. They're going to be fine. How are they going to learn unless they do it, right? So I've tried to prepare as many other people to be able to save the day if needed. And then I've also tried to instill a sense of discipline in the preparation and a regular protocol. Severe instance would be a case where we have a book that the chief meteorologist and I wrote here about here's how we cover severe weather. So when somebody new comes in the door, you know, it's not like we're inventing it from scratch. It's like, here's what we do. And the Cliff Note version of it is what I just told you. We're analyzing days out, a week out, days out, 1 day out, 20 hours out, 5 hours out. And the Mets are constantly updating everybody, and we're changing the plan to fit the scenarios that they're sketching out. And everybody's just sitting there on go, waiting to go. Now, I have to remind some newer people is, things like if a newer photographer, a new reporter comes to work like they do on a normal day, and they go out to cover tornado damage, and they're out there for 12 hours, and then we can't get a live shot up because they forgot to bring their cell phone charger with them. They brought their cell phone with them, but the cell phone's been lit up all day running live shots and relaying information, and it burned through the charge, and they forgot to bring the plug with them and plug into the battery booster that we have in the vehicle for them. So I'm having trouble getting a live shot up because the photographer forgot to bring their charger with them. So, and that's an honest mistake. People do, you just don't, it's like, you're preparing, everybody's got a go bag, your raincoat's in it, you got garbage bags in it, because you might need to wrap your gear in an additional layer of, if heavy wind driven rain's coming at you, you may need to punch holes in a garbage bag and put it over your head like a second raincoat to stay dry, right? So you always have zip ties and garbage bags and, snack bars and water and your rain gear and extra batteries and all that stuff. As an MMJ, if you get an MMJ job down the road, you should have your go bag, and you should just keep it in the trunk of your car, and it ought to have a change of clothes in it and an extra set of tennis shoes. And every day when you get to work, take that go bag out of your trunk and just put it in the trunk of your news vehicle, because you just don't know if something's going to happen. And I'm going to say, Christina, do you have a passport? Go to the airport. And you go to the airport with your passport and your go bag, and you get on that's a dramatic, we don't usually send people internationally from this market. But my point is it may be go and go now, because we got to get on this. I don't know when you're coming home. So that sense of preparation puts you in a position to be, and helping other people understand the importance of that, it puts you in a position to be able to stay calmer in situations, right? And the thermometer goes up and down depending on the situation. And I would say, is first and foremost, severe weather, for instance, my first concern is not about winning the story. I have seen what tornadoes and hurricanes can do to people. It kills them. So my first concern is protecting the well-being of the crew. So when I am asking a crew to position themselves in a certain place, you can well believe that within current data from the meteorologists and all our sources, we're putting a crew where they're going to be proximate to an event to be able to capture information and video, but they're going to have a buffer of protection to make sure they're out of harm's way. Here in town, there's a particular place we go a lot of times. It is a parking deck, and it's right on the river, and it looks west across the Chattahoochee River into Alabama, and it provides a dramatic venue for storms rolling in over Alabama and coming across the river into Georgia, right? And it is an amazing view for severe weather. We always put someone there. One of the reasons we put someone there is they can stand right there and shoot across the river, but literally, if things get hairy, they can grab their camera and run 5 feet to the right and jump into a stairwell, which is a gigantic concrete bunker that protects them from the weather. So they've got a fallback position. That's one of the reasons we chose that position. So, and in the middle of things, there's two things. Let's say, despite all the planning, stuff is falling apart, right? And it happens. I can tell you on election night, at 2 minutes before the 11 o'clock newscast, the control room was a train wreck, okay? And it wasn't like we weren't doing meaningful work and getting ready, but we had literally, the production crew, the producer, and we had probably another 6 people around that area getting ready to go into the 11 o'clock news, because in the hour preceding that, all of the candidates were coming out giving their victory speeches and concession speeches, and we were going from shot to shot to shot to shot to shot to get all these speeches in, right? And so at the tail end of that process, we were, instead of dipping down and going to network and having network, you know, starting to wrap up their primetime coverage, we were still in local coverage right up to the start of our 11 o'clock news. So I'm in the booth managing primetime coverage in real time while everybody else for the 11 o'clock is coming in, getting a handoff from the director and audio and producer and APs and people that were communicating with field crews. And so but for about 90 seconds, there was a lot of loud talking going on, but it was amazing. I got up, left the producer chair, the producer sat down, and there was still a little bit of furor going on. And I just, in the middle of that, we're 60 seconds from the top of the 11, I said, everybody shut up. I just yelled it out. And everybody got quiet. And I said, Tom, the producer, what's the first thing in your show? And he said, number 1, it's Chuck. Number 2, it's Shakira. Number 3, it's Elizabeth. Number 4, it's who was it? Blake, you know? And the director said, okay. And then even though there were still some rundowns coming in with last minute, the director in his head had a picture. I know where to go first, and I think I know where to go next. And so the level went, the calmness just elevated. Everybody got cool, and we knew where we were going for at least the first thing. And then we just got into it, and we were off and running, and the show was awesome. So, but for that 90 seconds, plus the GM was standing there too, because he's a former news guy, and he wanted to be in and around the action. So, you know, part of my mind is like, get out of here, dude. You're making me nervous, plus everybody else, you know. but he's a cool guy, and he knows news. And so everybody's on tilt for about 90 seconds while that last speech is wrapping up, and I'm communicating with directors who are getting up and someone else is sitting down. And so, but that moment for 90 seconds, that's a moment when, to finally circle back to your question, that's when you need cool, right? The two things that are out of that is, number 1, communication is the number 1 thing. Everybody's got to understand in 10 seconds, what are we expected to do? So I had to just cut through it all and say, quiet. The next thing up is this. Does everybody understand that? Tom punched into the anchor's earpieces and said, here's where we're going first. Everybody knew where we were going next. And we realized once we got into that live shot, we were going to buy ourselves about a minute and a half of time while that live shot was up. And then out the whole show then just boom, crystallized and fell in together, right? And then the other part of it, I would say, is outside of the safety issues I've talked about with weather, and in recent months we've talked about with protests, you know, and keeping crews safe. Outside of those kinds of things, which are real situations you got to monitor, you're responsible for, and you want to be protective of your teams, the line you use is, you know, if the director punches a wrong button in the newscast, nobody's going to die. Okay, let's put this in perspective. We're making a TV show here, all right? So don't beat yourself up if you flub one word during a live shot. Instead, concentrate on the fact that you just got an exclusive interview with this person live that no other competitor got. Let's celebrate the wins here. Let's not kill ourselves about little tiny things that you're going to get more reps on that. You're going to get better. So that perspective after election night, I had some crews, especially newer crews, right, who were not feeling good. We had just totally dominated an entire 24-hour election cycle and trounced our competition. But I had a couple of field crews, I could tell looking at the live shot, I could see the expression on the reporter's face. And I'm like, I know why this reporter is disappointed. It's because of that one word that he tripped on for like literally a half a second. It's like, I'm going to wait for this thing to step down when we rejoin network, and then I'm going to get him on the phone, and I'm going to put it in perspective for him. And that's really the context is, dude, one word. Look how far you've come in a month since you got here, and look what you just did. You just created magic, and you helped us totally dominate the election night, the biggest one in my lifetime. So concentrate on the win. Don't kill yourself about that little glitch. You powered on through and you kept on going and you look great on the end. So perspective and realization is like what we do. It's fun and there are high stakes and we should want to do the best we can and be perfect. But if there's a little mispunch or a half a second mic clip, because there's literally 9 live shots coming into the control room at the same time, and they got an audio operator who is like 6 months out of college and is a rock star, but guess what? We just pushed them to their limit. It's okay. I'm not going to beat you up about that. Look at the big picture. We just dominated election night, right? And the other thing is communication would be the number one thing. So again, sorry for the rambling answer, but keeping calm and keeping everybody else calm is first and foremost about communication. And sometimes that's just, literally, if there's too much freneticism and activity going on, you don't have the luxury of saying, hey guys, let's chat a little bit about this. In that moment, I had to say, shut up. And boom, it went to 0 volume. And I said, thanks guys. Here's where we're going next. Bullet, bullet, bullet. Everybody got that? Tell the anchors, awesome. Let's have a great show. And we lit it up and had a great 11 o'clock. Is that a fair answer?
Yes, thank you so much.
Sure.
Gene, as we're winding down, and I would say that if anyone hasn't watched your video yet with the PowerPoint, they're definitely going to watch it. But in closing, as these folks, a good amount of them are graduating and hopefully they've started looking for jobs already, we try and give them some advice on what to do. Obviously, have your resume ready, have a LinkedIn profile. We have something, it's around the country called Handshake. Make sure that you register that. I work with career and talent development. There are some other websites. There's one in particular, you've probably heard of it, Mandy.com, which has production jobs on and stuff. But other than that, what's your go-to? Like, to tell them, they need to start looking for jobs, and what's your go-to?
To me, my favorite go-to for specifically media jobs is it's the corporate websites of the media companies. Because what I love about these sites is you set up your profile, but once your profile is set up on that corporate website, you do a search on MMJ and it pulls up 50 jobs, and then you highlight 6 of them and you hit apply. Boom, you just apply for 6 jobs. It is so awesome. Those are, way beyond the days of mailing a tape to a news director to get them to put it in a machine and look at it. So, in my video, some of you guys have watched the video, I'm preaching apply for 100 jobs. Well, you set your profile up at 5 corporate websites and apply for 20 jobs at each site. There's your 100 jobs, right? So I'm a big fan of the corporate sites first, and there's nothing wrong with going to all these other sites that you've described too. And honestly, I would say whatever contacts you have from previous internships, freelance work, guest speakers like me, one of the edges you can give yourself before you graduate in May is don't wait until after you apply for a job to find out about opportunities. Instead, use your network now. And like I'll tell you, for instance, me, right? I mean, I'm looking to fill a job right now, and I know that next May, I'm going to be looking to fill one more job. So if you're graduating in May, you probably need to follow up with me at some point in the spring, because I know I'm going to have at least one job available, starting next June. So if you know other news directors, or other people that have graduated from your university a couple of years ago or in gigs elsewhere, start working that network, because you want to also, if you can, find out about other gigs that are not listed or advertised but might be coming up soon. And I try to give that information to applicants who are applying to me that, some of them apply to me and I've got to fill the job now, but I'll say, hey, I like your stuff. I have something I believe coming open 3 months from now, or, in May or in August. So try to work your network to find out about possible openings that are not even listed yet. Is that an okay way to offer up?
No, it is. You know, one thing I tell the students too is, stay in touch with me specifically or your other professors through social media sites, because what tends to happen is I'll get an email from a student who'll go, Professor Sandhouse, I don't know if you remember me, but I took Multimedia 1 with you or something like 3 years ago. And it's like, okay, well, I haven't heard from you in 3 years, but you want me to write a letter of reference. So now I have to sort of like search my memory bank, and I can't even remember what I had for breakfast this morning, type of a deal, where if you stay in touch in that particular way, then the face is fresh, what you're doing is fresh, and it's just easier to go back and do it. And you could have been an awesome student, and then once your memory is jogged, it's like, oh yeah, you did a great feature report. Yeah, you were a good student. But obviously the ones that you stay in touch with, even like I said, I get every day, you do too, Gene, through LinkedIn, and stuff like that. It's just, it's, and I'm not a big user particularly of LinkedIn, but, my daughter will say to me like, dang, Dad, you have like 400 contacts or something like that. It's like, I do. But that's like you guys who think it's in your best interest to be a professional contact. So don't underestimate. And I know a lot of times social media sites are like Instagram or Facebook or more for like kind of playing around stuff, but it's also just keeping tabs on each other and seeing what we're all about. And then again, when I do production in the school, I like to use my students as my talent. I've used Christina like several times. So if I need someone, my first thing is, well, let me look at my Facebook or Instagram contacts to see, oh yeah, that's right, she's really good. So don't devalue the importance of those little things and keeping your contacts.
Yeah, and I would dovetail off of that and say, if you should be right now, before you graduate in May, per the videos on my YouTube channel, you should be making your brand consistent across all your social media platforms, and you should begin policing those social media platforms or create a new platform. Like if your handle is party all night on Instagram and it's all shots of you drinking, you probably ought to create a different professional Instagram a channel or a profile and use that to start posting professional type experiences and photos and learning. If look at my Jay, if you're welcome to forward my signature that on my email has all my social links on it. And if you guys will click on that, you follow me, I'll follow you back. But most importantly, if you go to my social channels, and I'm not a rock star at this, but I just, I'm trying to practice what I preach. And if you look at my LinkedIn page, the cover art on the LinkedIn page looks exactly like the cover art on my Facebook professional page, and Twitter and Instagram and Twitch and Periscope. No, not Periscope. I don't have it on Periscope yet because I don't really use Periscope. But the idea is, if I get an overture from an applicant and they have a link to maybe their LinkedIn profile, I'll go there. But say they don't give me enough video examples, I may go to YouTube to try to find more examples of their work. And if I see the same branding on their YouTube channel that they have on their LinkedIn page, I'll know, oh, that's the same person, especially if they name, Sandy Smith that 10 million people have. It's like, that's the Sandy Smith that applied to me. And so here's some more examples of her work. Oh yeah, why didn't she show that? That package is better than the one she sent to me. That happens all the time. I have people send me resume reels, and the stuff they have buried on their YouTube channel is way better than the reel they sent to me. So I would say do that. Get your brand consistent and start policing that, and start posting professional related stuff on your channels so that it pushes out all the party pictures, of tequila shots to the bottom of your feed. So I won't go deep. I won't go digging, 6 months into your feed,
Well, Gene, you are a rock star, and you were totally awesome. And I hope you will agree to come back and speak again next semester for me, because I'm going to hassle you to do so.
Glad to do it.
You know, these 2 hours to me, they just really flew by quick. I mean, it was just, you were very engaging, and I could see by the body language of these folks that they really enjoyed it. So we thank you so much. And guys, stay in touch, you know, with Gene. Again, people in the industry are great contacts just for advice, if nothing else.
Y'all have an awesome rest of the semester. Please stay safe and stay well. Happy Thanksgiving, Merry Christmas, Happy Hanukkah, Happy New Year. And consider this the beginning of a conversation between us. So we've met each other. Connect with me on social. I'll follow you back, and just ping me every now and then with a question. I'd be happy to answer a question. And remember WRBL for internships and jobs. Remember Nextstar for internships and jobs. It's a really good company, and you know, we got 200 TV stations. So if you think I'm crazy and you don't want to work for me, there's probably another news director out there to connect with better. You can work for them.
Gina, are you okay? Hang on one second. Gina, are you okay if I put this video on my YouTube channel?
Yeah, please.
Okay.
Please do so. Yeah.
Okay.
Somebody had a question?
Go ahead, Melanie.
Yes, sorry. My last question would be, I just thought about it right now as you were speaking. How many jobs non-related to journalism should we list on our resume? Like if we had retail jobs or assistant manager jobs and things like that.
Oh man, I would say if any of that experience is good, prioritize your experiences that apply directly for the position for which you're applying. But I can tell you, I hired here at our television station because one of the reasons she didn't have any experience outside of coursework, right? But she had pretty good writing skills. But on her resume, she had listed that when she was still a senior in high school, she was a manager at a McDonald's. So being a manager at a fast food joint is hard enough, but to be a manager at a fast food joint when you're a high schooler, I thought, who in the heck can wrangle those employees that, you know, I mean, a lot of fast food people don't show up for work, you know, so she would open the store, you know, get the day going, go to school, and come back and close the store. So that's work ethic. But to be able to manage a team like that is like, that got her the interview, and I wound up hiring her. So that kind of an experience can, for me at least, demonstrate work ethic, leadership ability, organizational skills. I mean, if you're doing that, doing retail work, or you're doing, you know, waiting tables or something while you got your coursework and while you got an internship and while you got to, you know, help take care of your brothers and sisters, or, I mean, all that is a part of the picture. You know, that's fine. Celebrate that. I mean, and even references. I asked somebody for references, and one of the references they gave me was their middle school math teacher. It is the best reference I've ever gotten from anybody for any job. The guy blew me away.
Even better than the reference I gave Amanda?
It is. I'm sorry to say it, Jay.
Okay.
Because here's the reason why. The candidate, being a humble person, completely buried their origin story about their personal, what did they had overcome in their personal life. And when this middle school math teacher told me what this person had gone through in their personal life and how far they had come, I mean, all of the references were stellar, but all of a sudden, all the pieces of the puzzle started falling together. And I'm wondering, man, I mean, how'd this guy stay out of jail, much less get to be as good as he is at what he's doing right now? And so an unbelievable reference. So you just never know, Melanie, that something that tells the story not only of what I can do, but who I am and what is the core of my being, that can light a spark in a hiring manager. So celebrate that.
Thank you.
Absolutely.
All right. Thanks, Gene. We appreciate it once again. And guys, before we go, not to be, you know, a buzzkill right here, but we're looking at rough cuts next week. So, so we got that going on. And again, much thanks to everyone.
You,
and
very generous of you. Very
You're
generous.
welcome. Glad to spend time with you. Thanks so much for the invitation. I look forward to our our next time together, Jay and everybody else. If you're still around in the spring, glad to see you. In between now and then, connect with me on social, follow me, especially YouTube channel, subscribe and turn on alerts so that you get the next ping when the next video gets posted. And follow me and I'll follow you back.
Thank you.
Okay.
Bye guys. Be
Bye.
blessed.
Thank you.
Thank you.
McConnell, how do I